So there's a pretty major problem in esports marketing, and it's the fact that an esports audience doesn't exist. And yes, I said that correctly. And what I mean by that is that depending on the game, and even within the same game, your audience demographics are going to be very unique. And a lot of times as an esports org, you're competing in multiple games at one time. So solving that issue of not overgeneralizing and reaching each member of your audience effectively and maximizing engagement can be a pretty tough challenge. So what we're gonna do today is take you through 3 real world examples of high level esports organizations that all implement different strategies that have the potential to work. And each of these approaches can work. They have pros and cons. So we're gonna go through each of them, and at the end, we're gonna help you decide which approach is best for you. And the first approach you can take here is to actually segment based on whether it's esports or non-esports related content. The perfect example of this is 100 Thieves. They have their regular 100 Thieves account, and they have their 100 Thieves esports account. And this takes place both on Twitter and on YouTube. And the main pro here is that you avoid bombarding your audience with content they don't care about, because especially for a lifestyle brand like 100 Thieves, which isn't just esports, if you're constantly feeding your audience that doesn't care about esports content, they're gonna tune out. And it's not a huge deal on Twitter, it's not as big of a deal, but on YouTube especially, if you're feeding your content to people that don't care about it, they're not gonna click through, they're not gonna watch. If they do click through, the retention is not gonna be great, and that content is not gonna get pushed out via the YouTube algorithm to more and more people. That's gonna kill the performance of that channel. And on Twitter, if you're constantly posting content that your audience doesn't really care about, they're gonna be more likely to unfollow, they're not gonna engage, and yeah, your engagement is just gonna go through the floor. So by segmenting, you can prevent that, and you can actually feed the content to people that want to watch the content. And that's gonna help improve performance over time. And then what 100 Thieves do is that if a post does really well on the esports account, the main account will actually retweet it. And because it did so well, it's likely a tweet or a post or a video or whatever that is gonna resonate with a wider audience as well. So if they see a post that overperforms, they can very easily still distribute it to their main audience on their main account. Now, of course, the con to this is that you're running 2 different accounts. And for them specifically, they're running 2 different accounts on 2 different platforms. So you can kind of spread your resources thin. Of course, 100 Thieves doesn't really have a resources issue as far as I'm aware. So they're able to execute on this. But if you don't have those resources to manage multiple accounts on multiple different platforms at the same time, like you're a team of 1 or a team of 2 or 3 or whatever, just a small team that doesn't have massive amounts of resources at your disposal, it's going to be difficult to maintain that. And if the content quality begins to suffer on both of those accounts, neither account is going to perform to its maximum potential. So just consider that. And where I think this approach is really beneficial is if you are an esports org that isn't just an esports org. If you're trying to take that more lifestyle approach, then yeah, you might want to segment your content this way once you're mature enough. The second approach you can take is actually breaking up your accounts based on the individual esport. And one organization that takes this approach is Team Liquid. If you type in Team Liquid on Twitter, you'll see Team Liquid, their main account that has about 630,000 followers. You'll see their Team Liquid League of Legends, which has somewhere in the mid 200,000s worth of followers. You'll see the Team Liquid CSGO, Team Liquid Valorant, so on and so forth. And this is kind of the 100 Thieves approach on steroids. So if you have the resources to, it can be a good way to make sure that the content you're putting out is hitting a very, very targeted audience. So you're accounting for the differences between a Valorant audience and a League of Legends audience. And you're making sure that whatever goes on the League account is resonating with that League audience. And you're not getting that situation where sure, maybe you have the esports account, but you have fans of multiple esports, and someone who doesn't care about League of Legends is seeing League of Legends content, they don't watch it, and it doesn't perform well, so on and so forth. Now, the obvious con to this approach is that it's very resource intensive. So if you don't have those resources, you don't have the time or the manpower or the money to be able to actually nurture each account with the attention that it needs, the attention that it deserves, that content quality, that content cadence is gonna suffer. And of course, another issue that you could potentially run into here is diluting your engagement across multiple accounts. So for example, let's say you had one account for your entire organization on a single platform, like one Twitter account, and you made a tweet and it got 10,000 likes. If you would have split up your audience across 2 different accounts, and sure, there's gonna be some overlap there, but there's gonna be some people that follow one account that don't follow the other, you could potentially sacrifice some of that engagement. And is that overall long-term bad thing, an overall negative, missing out on a potential 500 likes on one tweet? Maybe not, but it might add up over time. And really the only way to tell there is to actually test. So I assume since Team Liquid is using this approach, they've tested and it does work well for them. And they do obviously have the manpower and the resources to give each account the attention it deserves. And if you look at, for example, some tweets on their League of Legends account, it rivals or actually pretty much equals the engagement that some of their tweets on their main account with hundreds of thousands more followers gets on their tweets. And that can probably be explained by the fact that the people following the League of Legends account are following for League of Legends content. So when they see it, they enjoy it, they like, they engage, they comment, they retweet, all the good stuff. So again, there's some pretty obvious pros and pretty obvious cons with this approach. And this third approach is super unique. I haven't really seen this in action outside of this organization. I'm sure other orgs use it, but I haven't seen it articulated this way. On my podcast with Sentinel social media manager Zach Lang, he had actually mentioned that they don't break up their content across multiple accounts on the same platform. They have one Twitter account, one TikTok account, one IG account. They don't segment based on account. They actually segment based on platform, so certain platforms get more attention on a certain game. For example, they noticed that their IG audience skewed younger and actually enjoyed Fortnite more. So they're posting more Fortnite content on that platform relative to what they post on Twitter. Whereas on Twitter, they noticed that their audience enjoys Valorant content. So if you look at their Twitter presence, a lot of that content is centered around their Valorant team. So what they've done is they've been able to actually maximize engagement on each individual platform without having to split up their audience across multiple accounts on that same platform. And the reason why I like this approach so much is that it's actually applicable to smaller teams. If you don't have the resources, cool, you're running one account on each platform. You just need to understand what type of content your audience enjoys on that platform relative to audiences on other platforms. And as far as cons, I would say that if you're an organization that is trying to lean into more of a lifestyle approach like 100 Thieves is, for example, it might be difficult to take this approach because there is that very clear divide between lifestyle content and esports content. An organization like the Sentinels is very focused on their competitive esports rosters. They're very focused on their winning teams in Valorant right now. They're very focused on Bugha being a Fortnite world champion. And sure, they do skits and IRL content with those rosters, but as far as I'm aware of, having like other content creators that aren't in the esports realm really isn't a major focus for them right now. So they're able to take that approach. And honestly, that's the situation a lot of other esports teams that are up and coming are in. You're not gonna have massive content creators that aren't in esports that have millions upon millions upon millions of followers. So that is something to consider, though I would argue that most up-and-coming esports organizations and up-and-coming brands in the esports and gaming scene are closer to the Sentinels position than they are to, let's say, 100 Thieves. Like, you're not gonna have a Courage JD or a Valkyrae on your roster when you're just getting started. A lot of your focus is probably gonna be on your competitive esports rosters, making sure they do well, making sure that your players get the platform that they deserve. So that's why when it comes down to which one you should pick, obviously it's going to depend on your organization and the maturity of your organization, the resources that you have. If you have the resources to be able to do so and you have a reason to do so, sure, segment your content. Have an account for your non-esports content, have an account for your esports oriented content. As you build a following over time, more and more fans are going to be more interested in the IRL aspect of your players' lives or of your content creators' lives. So having that very clear segmentation does make sense. Though I would argue that most teams early on are going to be in a situation where they benefit from taking the Sentinels approach instead. If you are on multiple platforms, why spread yourself even more thin by having multiple accounts on multiple platforms? Especially when you're in a position where you haven't even built up a sustainable audience yet. You're already gonna split your audience in half before you even have 1,000 followers. Probably not the best way to go. So instead, look at what type of content your audience on a specific platform prefers. So if you notice that your Twitter audience loves COD content, whereas your TikTok audience loves Fortnite content. If you have athletes in COD, you have athletes in Fortnite, then maybe put more of your Fortnite content onto IG or onto TikTok, like I just said, or put more of your COD content onto Twitter. So you could take that approach and segment your content that way, so you're still maximizing engagement without necessarily splitting your audience up or without necessarily spreading yourself thin or your team too thin. So let me know in the comments down below which approach resonates most with you. Which approach of the three that we mentioned is most likely to be successful for your esports organization or your brand? Let me know below. And if you liked this video, of course, drop a like down below, drop a sub down below for new videos just like this every single week. And if you want to learn more about esports social media strategy and really what not to do, because that's important as well, click on this video that's coming up on the screen right now. And again, drop a like down below, sub, all the good stuff for the algorithm. Really appreciate it. Now we'll go ahead and see you in that next video to learn even more about social media marketing.